welcome back to another Broken Banners Battle Report coverage of Captain Con. I've got a game for you from day 3, the first of the day, between Derek playing Night's Watch and Wade playing Boltons. Derek is a regular on this channel, and if you've seen any of his games, you know by now that he loves Jokin and Vargo more than just about anything else in this game. He's currently on a mission to get wins at multiple events with every neutral commander in all of the factions, and right now he's rounding up his Night's Watch adventure. He's bringing Jokin in Stormcrow Archers, a very natural, if almost required, pick. Brothers in Arms is Jokin's signature card, giving him a hell of a power boost on any Stormcrow unit by giving them extra dice. Stormcrow Archers really want those, because as they are, when they're collecting the NCU zones they want, they can actually punch pretty hard, getting rerolls on a long-range attack with vulnerable and potentially even sundering. Even just a couple of those is going to turn them into a really powerful range unit, so if you manage to collect all 3, they're really going to be hitting hard. And Jokin's got some great tools to really squeeze some extra mileage out of them, including precision on his own unit. He also gets to bring the Widower for free, who is a pretty stacked up attachment, bringing Hold the Line, Sundering, and Jokin's Vassal. It's important to note that Jokin's Vassal means that he counts as Jokin for cards, not Commander. Jokin's cards care about Jokin, not being a commander, but some of the Night's Watch cards do. Nonetheless, he's still a free attachment and brings a lot of value to anything. So he's going in Shadow Tower Spearmen to give them a much desired keyword and additional incentive to never get engaged with them. Giving another Stormcrow unit as a target for Brothers in Arms, we have the Senior Builder, a pretty durable unit for only 5 points. Night's Watch are very familiar with Stormcrow Mercs at this point. Rounding up the list, we have 2 more ranged units, Ranger Trackers and Scorpions, both of which are a little strange for ranged units. Ranger Trackers are short-ranged but cavalry, and putting on Watch Marshal, they have a lot of condition token utility, and they're really difficult to pull down with Swift Retreat. Scorpion has the attachment that gives them Overwatch, giving them a really powerful range of threat, and they can even take long-range pot shots on 6s to try and punch through some extra damage. For NCUs, we have Othel Yarwick and Bowen Marsh. Othel has a really powerful zone replacement that's giving yet another ranged attack to this list, and Bowen Marsh is just giving you an additional way to dig through your deck and get what you need, which is, you guessed it, Brothers in Arms. This list doesn't necessarily need Brothers in Arms. I think with all of these range attacks, it's going to do pretty well as it is, but hey, whoever said no to additional dice? Bowen Marsh is going to help you get there, and Othel's going to soften up targets to make you think before getting within 14 inches of Stormcrow Archers who are going to be tossing out potentially up to 10 or more dice with rerolls, sundering, and or a vulnerable token before they go out. Ouch. Wade is running Boltons. As I mentioned earlier, Boltons are in a pretty rough place. They recently got the ability to take in neutrals, but honestly that hasn't really done much for them. Still, I think Wade came up with a really cool idea for a list. He's got Ramsay Commander and Spears. Ramsay's bringing Reek with him, so it's also another double attachment commander, and he's got Horrific Visage and Prey on Fear, which is going to give Spears a little bit more incentive to not get engaged with them. Between the Set for Charge, the prolific panic token generation, and the Prey on Fear that'll give them sustain through those failed panic tests. Adding even more units you don't want to get engaged with, we have 2 units of Blackguards with Dreadfort Captains. This is an absolute nightmare of a unit to get stuck in with. I give it about the same rating that I would Rose Knights. At a similar cost and similar speed, don't get engaged with them. Seriously, just don't. Just don't. There's nothing to get from getting engaged with them. Combine that with the Spears, and it's really tricky to find something you do want to get bogged down with. Just to help it out, we've got Bastards Girls with Ben Bones in them, as well as Sour Allen in the bows. Both of these attachments are free, and they're much needed to help give these units their full potential. Bastards Girls have the potential to hit some really hard spike damage by being able to toss out 2 attacks in a single action with the back-to-back utility of Charging Volley, but they don't really toss out enough dice, and without access to rerolls or ways to get additional keywords, they might not push through the damage you need. But if you can get a unit down to about 8 wounds, Bastards Girls become a real threat that you have to keep in mind, and that's where Sour Allen comes in. Sour Allen gives you a choice of a few different abilities to stack onto the bows, or any unit if you really want to stick them in there, that can give you crit blow or sundering, or you're tossing out a panic token before the attack. He's a double-edged sword because if you don't manage to take a rank off with him, you're going to lose 2 wounds. But bows can pretty easily do that if you're firing into melee, where they're going to get rerolls and precision. This is something to rival Stormcrow archers, where you're tacking on multiple keywords including precision and you're getting rerolls, except the bows are hitting on 3s. Their saves are worse because they don't have loyalty through coin, so while they both look like 5/7 at a glance, Stormcrow archers will peel out in the end. Still, they hit really hard, and I don't want anyone to fall asleep on these guys because they will tear you apart. For NCUs, we also have 2 on the Bolton side. We have Fat Walda and Roose Bolton. Roose Bolton is a time-honored classic, tossing out some panic tokens by converting order tokens on his unit whenever he claims a zone to put panic tokens out on an enemy, and he can replace a zone to make someone take a panic test. Fat Walda gains an additional benefit when she claims one of a few certain zones, and one of them is actually just really good. Putting her onto the crowns to toss out a weaken token and make an enemy take a panic test, which Boltons want people to be doing, she's not terrible. I don't necessarily like her. I feel like she's a lot like Shira, but she's okay. They're going to be playing on Feast for Crows, which is actually really nice for Boltons. They're playing on Somber Battlefield, which I rolled for, and oops, it requires corpse piles. So actually, it's just a lot of forest with a bog and some stakes. Derek starts out on the terrain by placing a bog down in the center, a classic move against a bunch of 4-speed units. Wade's going to put down a forest, and Derek is going to mirror it with his own forest, making a symmetrical battlefield, which Wade is going to break up by putting stakes on the opposite side. Objective cards come out. In this game, the top one is going to be when you control the objective and score, you get to put a panic token on someone in long range, and the bottom objective is you dish out a weaken token when you make a melee attack. Derek won the toss-up for deployment, and he's going to make Wade deploy first. He's going to put Blackguard on the opposite end of the corpse file, which is a move you can never really go wrong with. Derek places Jokin's Scourgers on the opposite end of the stakes to give him some extra protection from the slow units. Wade's going to put Sour Allen and the Bowman straight down the center. Derek is going to put his senior builder mercenaries towards the bottom level objective. Also in the center, Wade's going to put Ramsay and Spears, and then Derek is going to put the Widower and the Shadow Tower Spears near-ish where the bows are. Wade's going to put the other Dreadfort Blackguard down towards the bottom, and then Derek is going to place his Watch Marshal trackers all the way towards the bottom end of the map. Wade's going to put the dogs at, you guessed it, the bottom. It's a very heavily stacked battlefield. Scorpion's going to get nestled between Jokin and his boyfriend. I'm not going to put them up on the HUD screen that shows their wounds because, unsurprisingly, against a bunch of 4-speed units, they're not going to get engaged. Wade is going to go first, and he's going to realize very early on that this battlefield does not favor him. He's got a lot of slow-moving defensive infantry that want to get bogged down in melee against a triple-range threat. So he's going to start off by putting Roose onto the horses and maneuvering the Blackguard. He's not putting out any condition tokens yet, wisely so because it'd be easy to shunt off with all the NCU zones open. Derek is going to put Bowen on letters, and he's going to weaken the Bolton's Bastards Girls. Walda goes onto the bags, and she's going to remove that same weaken token off of the Bolton's Bastards Girls to keep them a threat. Derek's going to march his Shadow Tower Spears on up, with Widower attaching Sword in the Darkness on their activation to make sure that they are always throwing 7 dice. Wade is going to move his Blackguard on the very top, and then after the pivot, being able to grab his objective. The senior builder mercenaries are going to rush on the bottom and march on up. Wade's going to march his spearmen towards the center, and the archers are going to maneuver on Derek's side to get into position to start raining down fire. Wade responds with his own archers, moving them also towards the center to provide support to his spears. Spears on spears, archers on archers. Artillery gets brought in to skew the balance in favor of Derek. He's going to attach Shields of the Realms of Men to give them extra defensive ability since they have fewer wounds. Wade's going to move up his Blackguard on the bottom side, and trackers are going to respond. Shields of the Realms of Men is also going to get attached to them, which is going to do double duty against the double shots of the Bolton's Bastards Girls, who move into position to threaten the trackers on the bottom end. Start of Derek's turn, when he activates Othel, he's going to put Mark Target out onto the Bastards Girls and shoot them up. They almost lose a full rank, and with the vulnerable token, they're in a very precarious position if they're going to try and go in on anything. But more importantly, start of Derek's turn on his first activation of the next round, he's going to be able to turn that into a weakened token. He's going to follow up by putting Bow and Marsh onto the swords, and he's going to shift up and shoot the spears. Again, their saves are awful, and with precision and rerolls, he's able to punch through a ton of damage on the hits alone. He got a really lucky attack with all those precision, but quite frankly, they weren't saving well to begin with. Wade's going to try and put pressure on the bottom end of the map by having the Bolton's Bastard Girls shift on up and shoot. Derek gets a miraculous roll and takes no damage off the range attack. Still, Wade's going all on in. He lands the charge after the rerolls with Ben Bones, and he's going to run on over that corpse pile with a weakened token and, as one might predict, do very little damage against the trackers. They're going to stay in position using the Stalwart Mercenary card to auto-pass because he's in short range of the Widower, who is also Jokin. That's going to set him up to get an amazing flank attack off on the Bolton's Bastard Girls, who are now stuck on in there. Start of Derek's turn, he's going to play Brothers in Arms attaching to the mercenaries to give them additional dice. With all those units in range, including a Jokin, there's going to be a ton on this, and even going over the corpse pile, it's going to hurt, especially after Light that Brings the Dawn is going to get played to give him rerolls. Those Bolton's Bastard Girls are getting blown up and are brought down to just 3 wounds. Wade is going to go ahead activating Roos onto the horse to panish the mercenaries, and he's going to try and maneuver up those spears to again apply pressure. However, they've been dinged up pretty hard, so Derek is going to activate Othel on Bags, replacing it to shoot up the spears. It's going to put Wade into a really precarious position because he's getting shot up all over the place before he even really gets a chance to do anything. I think Wade starts feeling the pressure, and he feels obligated to put out some damage of his own on a ranged attack. However, the Shadow Tower Spears are a much tougher target, and he's not able to take a rank off after choosing Sundering, and they're both taking 2 wounds. Derek's going to go ahead, activate the Stormcrow Archers, and finish off the Spears with a huge hit. Corpse Pile is going to get placed on down, and it's going to have the Sundering objective card on it. The wheels are coming off the bus for Wade, so he goes for a Hail Mary charge with the Blackguard, which unfortunately is going to fail. He doesn't fail the panic test, but he's not in there to apply any pressure, and the Watch Marshal attached Ranger Trackers are going to make an attack into the Bolton's Bastard Girls, land a pretty nice hit, and they're going to be able to finish them off. The second corpse pile allowed by the objectives in the game are going to go on out, and that's going to set up the battlefield for the rest of the map with Wade in a back foot position. The Shadow Tower Spears are going to get zapped with Fat Walda, and they're going to lose their card and gain a weakened token, which isn't probably going to do much for Wade right now, but the Shadow Towers are still going to persevere and march on forward to threaten the bows. Wade's going to activate his Blackguard, maneuvering them, centering their position on the corpse pile, and then Derek is going to maneuver up his own Scorpion to start getting a central position on the battlefield where he can start shooting into the very durable Blackguard. It doesn't take a genius to figure out Wade is in a really difficult position. Boltons are not known for their amazing comebacks, and Derek is in a very dominant position. He's going to put Roos onto the swords, panicking the Shadow Tower Spears, and he's going to shoot them with Sour Allen in the bows, knocking off a few wounds. Derek's going to put Bowen onto the bags to heal them up and remove the weaken, and then the bows are going to activate and shoot them and deal even more damage, setting them down lower, but not getting them off their 7 dice. Othel is going to take the horses, and he's going to replace it for shots onto the bows, dealing 4 wounds, which is really impressive off of an NCU alone. Next, Wade is going to go ahead and get those Blackguard in on that charge they always wanted, and deal a couple of wounds to the Senior Builder mercenaries. Fires that burn against the cold is going to get played for the rerolls, which is going to allow the mercenaries to pass and not bomb a panic test at a minus bazillion. Derek is going to activate his spears, and he's going to charge them in on over the bog onto the 5-7 saving bows. It doesn't take much to really punch through a lot of damage, especially with the Sundering, so not many hits are needed to level them out to just a couple wounds. Wade's going to put Walda onto the crowns, and he's going to zap the Shadow Tower Spears again to weaken them. And I don't even think Wade was expecting it, but that would be a fail for the Shadow Tower Spears that would punch through some damage. Fires that burn against the cold is going to get played, that's going to re-roll it. After that, the Stormcrow Mercenaries are going to activate. They're going to make an attack. They take some damage off the Horrific Visage, but they're able to punch through a little bit of damage on their own. Wade has nothing but the Blackguard to dirtle around on the top point, which gives Derek a bunch of activations in a row. Stormcrow Archers are going to shoot through some damage onto those Blackguard on the top side, and then the Scorpion is going to shoot on into the Blackguard on the bottom end. He's going to take some damage, but the Stormcrow Mercenaries are going to fail their own panic test there. Wade doesn't remember Prey on Fear now, which would have restored him a couple of wounds, but it's still attritioning and chipping away at those mercenaries. Afraid to make his unit fail another panic test and take more damage and possibly remind Wade that he has prey on fear, he's going to have the trackers charge on into the Blackguard instead. I'll admit, I don't quite see what the purpose of this is other than hoping to get really lucky, and he's going to take a ton of damage off the Horrific Visage before he gets to do anything and drop himself down to 1 rank on a pretty puny melee attack. Still, he gets some damage through. After the prey on fear is going to heal them back, and he is going to make them fail the panic test, which does get the objective token onto the ranger trackers. In Feast for Crows, you actually don't need to have more equal ranks to an engaged enemy. So even on their last rank, trackers are able to score. So maybe I shouldn't have doubted Derek. Maybe that's why he usually beats me. Derek's going to start off on round 4, and he's going to put Bowen onto swords again to fish through some cards, and then he's going to have those spears attack and finish off the bows. He's then going to surge forth and move himself on into the rear of the Blackguard. He's going to play Take the Black as well. He's not going to take Sour Allen, likely because I think he forgot Sour Allen was even in the unit because he did jack all that game, but he'll still restore a couple of wounds. Wade's next, and he's going to put Roos out onto the bags, and he's going to put a panic token onto the mercenaries to keep him softened up and vulnerable to the Horrific Visage. The bags are going to heal up those Blackguard on the bottom end, making them really nasty for everyone that's going to try and get engaged with them. Othel's going to go onto the letters, and he's actually going to draw those cards on up and put a panic token onto the Blackguard. Wade's going to put Walda onto the crowns, put out a weaken token onto the trackers, and zap the mercs for another wound. Derek's going to, and he's going to activate Jokin, and he's going to have him shoot those Blackguard up top and deal a ton of damage and make them drop the objective token with the failed panic test. Bet Wade's wishing he didn't use the bag so early now. Next is Wade, who's going to have those Blackguards just pick up back the objective while they can, and then the spears on the bottom end for Derek are going to attach Sword in the Darkness yet again and charge on in. They're going to fail that Horrific Visage test, and even though they don't take any damage on account of the unyielding, they are going to immediately lose that card that they put on. Ha, that's kind of funny. Next, Light that Brings the Dawn is going to go on out to give rerolls. Still, despite all that and attacking in the rear, Wade's only going to lose a few wounds on those Blackguard, and they're probably going to heal that real quick with all the Horrific Visage that's going out on these melee attacks. They're going to slap the Ranger trackers, and even though they don't get them to fail the panic test, they do claim the objective back because they have more ranks after the attack. With Wade having lost so many units so early, Derek's going to get a ton of activations off in a row, starting off with a Scorpion shot onto the Blackguard, dealing a few more wounds. Then, the Mercenaries are going to attack, using Stalwart Mercenaries out of Jokin's Commander Suite to auto-pass the Horrific Visage panic test so that they can try and take back that objective. However, they're not going to push through any damage at all on that attack, and they're going to have equal ranks, so they're not able to take it. The trackers are going to use their cavalry maneuver and then their march to piss on out of there. There's nothing left for them to gain, at least not with a melee attack. Derek might have them loop back around for a ranged attack, but considering there is that unclaimed objective over there, that might be the smarter way to go. At this point, there's really not much to gain from attacking the Blackguard unless he really wants to table Wade. Wade starts off, and he's going to put Walda onto bags, using that little bonus that I crap-talked earlier to heal one extra wound to get those guys back on up to max ranks. They still have the weakened token, but quite honestly, who cares? Blackguard aren't there for attacking, they're there to be attacked. That leaves swords open, however, and Derek's going to put Bowen onto swords, again digging through his deck with Bowen Marsh. The Stormcrow archers are going to get a shot off into the other Blackguard who have been mostly neglected by Wade's resources. He's not going to take too much damage off the attack all considered, but he's going down to 1 wound left. Wade's going to finally play a card this game, putting Skin Collection onto his bottom side Blackguard who are holding down the fort, and they're going to get a huge amount of damage off onto those mercenaries, and leaving them in an extremely vulnerable position considering that Wade can toss out panic tests off the NCU board whenever he wants, and healing up a little bit for the trouble. Derek is going to get his revenge, though, and he's just going to get 1 precision hit off and some other dice. Who cares? There's only 1 wound left on those Blackguard, and they are gone. No more corpse piles to place out, but that was one of Wade's scoring units off, and now there's just that 1 sole unit of Blackguard down at the very bottom. Wade running out of activations to go through real quick. So he's going to have Walda zap the spears to put out a weaken token and to try and push through some damage and maybe even get the Prey on Fear to heal them up to full. Derek's going to activate his Ranger trackers, and he's going to move them on up after using Othel on the horses to move them up, to give him a total of 24 inches. Shadow Tower Spears are then going to retreat, because Derek has figured out there is nothing to gain by melee attacking the Blackguard. It doesn't matter how nice his Night's Watch unit is, Blackguard with a Dreadfort Captain are going to duke it out with just about anything in this game, and they're going to come out on top. Derek's going to have the Mercs retreat as well. And while Wade doesn't actually have the tray pivot around for an unknown reason, likely because he forgot he needed to, they are facing the Shadow Tower Spears, which was agreed between the players. I know this because I am sitting there right off screen. Scorpions are then going to shoot on into the flank of the Blackguard, and they're going to get a little bit more off on them. But they're not going to fail the panic test. They're not going to drop the objective. They are going to maintain that and keep Wade on in there so far as score goes from getting absolutely crushed. Wade recognized at this point that going into round 6, he's just there for fun. He's just there to try and make sure he doesn't get crushed with his sole unit of Blackguards, and he's going to squeeze out as much mileage out of them as he possibly can. The Shadow Tower Spears are going to activate with Derek going first, and he's going to have them reposition their way on around so that they can get into a better place to defend against Wade's attack. Wade sees no point in making Derek wait for it, so the Blackguard are going to charge on in, triggering the set for charge. But all things considered, this might be a greater detriment to Derek than it is for Wade, because Wade still has Horrific Visage and the Dreadfort Captain on in there. So if Derek fails that panic test, he'll probably be healing more than he's dealing damage. Derek gets really lucky and he passes the panic test and instead punches through a ton of damage and makes them fail the panic test before they get to do anything. Still, without rerolls and throwing only 5 dice on 4s, Derek manages to lose a few wounds and gets dropped down to his last ranks, and no more Soda in the Darknesses are available to get him back up to 7. Wade is able to claim that objective, which will heal him a little bit at the end of the round. Not that it'll be useful since it's round 6, but it's good to know what objective that is. Derek is going to activate Bowen Marsh, and he's going to put him onto the bags. He's going to try and heal up those Shadow Tower Spears rather than trying to punch through any more damage. Yeah, he could take swords and he could take a pot shot with the Scorpion, and he's not going to die off of it, but he might as well heal them up and just let Wade make his attack, because why not? At this point, they both recognize the game is over and Wade's losing, and he gets pretty lucky with a Crown Zap, and he's going to manage to take out the Stormcrow Mercs, but Derek is still in a really good position that he's going to be able to score off of all of these objectives by using the NCU board and activations to get onto everything except to the Shadow Tower Spears that are locked on in there with the Dreadfort unit. That's going to end the score at a 10-7. I think Wade had an uphill battle from the start. Not only is he playing Boltons, which is a rough matchup, but he's playing a really skew list against melee infantry. And Derek was walking on in with 3 different ranged units. And I think that's one of the reasons why Wade was able to claw back as much as he was and keep this at a standard defeat rather than a crushing. He was able to leverage his melee unit and force Derek to get engaged with him in melee, baiting him in, thinking that he'd be able to table him, and able to claw back to VP along the way. Wade definitely made a couple mistakes, which I definitely don't blame him for, considering he'd been out of the game for years, but I think he demonstrated a lot of skill and managed to pull back as far as he did. He lost a lot of units really early on, and that's a tough thing to come back with, especially when your enemy's got 5 activations on board and you're running 2 NCUs yourself. I think Wade did a great job, and I really hope to get to see more of him and we get him on the channel again. Thank you for everyone who watched, and I always appreciate everyone that makes it all the way through to the end of the video. I myself am notorious for not watching, and rarely when I do, finishing any kind of video at all. So it really means a lot to me that you guys are able to make it all the way out here as far as you do. I hope you guys tune on in for our next battle report. Thank you very much, and see you guys then.